Today, starting off, we have a great friend of the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. I talk about her so much here that it's great to see her here. She's in several of the wonderful photographs around the room.
Don't tell me.
She is the first and only woman in U.S. history to be elected both governor and a United States senator. Jeanne Shaheen has served New Hampshire citizens for decades. As a member of the Senate Committees on Foreign Relations, Appropriations, Armed Services, Small Business, and Entrepreneurship, Shaheen is working to improve our economy through increased exports, strengthening math and science education, and addressing our energy challenges. Before joining the Senate, Shaheen served 3 terms as governor of New Hampshire. She was also in the state Senate when I was an intern there many, many years ago. She and her husband, Bill, live in Maverick. Senator Shaheen.
So I promise Neil I won't tell any stories about your years in the state Senate as an intern. As long as you don't tell any about me. Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone. It's really nice to be able to join you. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to stay for the panel discussion because I know that will be fascinating. I thought Peter was going to bring everybody a beer, but he said no. Last Thursday, I was down at the Great Bay, and I had the opportunity to do a little bit of a hike on the new Sweet Trail there, which goes through some of the marshlands and the forests. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to have the New Hampshire Coastal Adaptation Workshop, so New Hampshire CAW, to have a chance to see some of the modeling that they have done on what will happen to the marshes around the Great Bay under various scenarios of climate change. And I will tell you that the scenarios are very frightening, with the worst one being if we do nothing to address climate change, our marshes around the Great Bay will be gone as the result of the rising oceans, and the impact not only on the landscape but on the potential for what that will mean in so many other areas is, as I said, nothing short of frightening. So I am very pleased to be here this morning to start you off as you talk about what we should be doing to address climate change in New Hampshire and how we can approach it at all levels, whether we're homeowners or business people or utilities or whatever we do. There is an opportunity for each of us to address it. Some of you may remember that when I was governor, we put in place what we call the New Hampshire Building Energy Conservation Initiative, the BECI program, which began to retrofit state buildings for emissions and to be more energy efficient. And as the result of that program, not only have we saved taxpayers about $2 to $4 million a year on the state's energy bills, but we've reduced carbon dioxide emissions by 37 tons annually. So that's the equivalent of taking 4,000 cars off the road. I was also proud as governor to sign into law legislation that restructured the electric markets here so that initially businesses could take advantage of other options for generation, and now homeowners can also take advantage of that. My experiences as governor and as someone who lived through the energy crises in the 70s made me very concerned about climate change when I ran for the Senate. It's one of the things that I wanted to work on when I got to Washington. And so I worked very hard to get on the Energy Committee and spent my first 4 years in the Senate as a member of the Energy Committee. And unfortunately, during those 4 years, not one energy bill got from the Senate to the floor. The House passed a cap and trade bill, that never got taken up in the Senate. And after that experience, I thought, or as part of that experience, I thought a lot about what could we do to really make some progress around addressing our energy use in the country in a way that would reduce pollution. And after my experience both as a homeowner, and I won't go into, my husband and I built a house in Madbury in 1979 in the middle of the Iranian oil crisis, which we did a number of things to make it more energy efficient. But after that experience, after my experience as governor, after my experience on the Senate Energy Committee, I thought there's got to be a way to make some progress on this issue, this debate, because so much of it has been polarized with, and we saw this on the Energy Committee in the Senate, with those people who support fossil fuels, opposing anybody who supports alternatives or renewables, with the Midwest and the West and the South opposing both coasts and the Northeast in terms of energy use. And I thought, well, there's got to be something that we can all agree on. There's got to be a better way to do this if we're going to make some progress. And I came back to energy efficiency, because energy efficiency is the cheapest, fastest way to deal with our energy needs. It's something that if you support fossil fuels, if you support renewables, if you're from New England or from Louisiana or from North Dakota, we can all agree that we benefit from energy efficiency. And it used to be that people thought about energy efficiency as putting on a sweater and turning down the thermostat. Well, energy efficiency, as you're going to hear from the panel today, and many of you know already, is a whole range of technologies that have been developed. Many are off the shelf. We're not looking for new innovation, though innovations are happening all the time. But this is a way for us to address our energy needs that not only lowers costs, helps create jobs, reduces our dependence on foreign oil, and reduces emissions in a way that's dramatic. I've had the opportunity to visit a number of businesses around New Hampshire. In fact, I've spent the last couple of years doing that. And in the last few months, I've had a chance to visit Coca-Cola Bottling of northern New England, and I've seen where they've been able to eliminate 2,000 truckloads of bottles annually because they have a new technology that they're using that blows their plastic bottles, and they're saving the energy use by reusing the air that it takes to blow out those bottles. I had a chance a couple of weeks ago to visit the Woodstock Inn in Woodstock and see what's been done. I visited the brewery too, but don't tell people that. But to see what they're doing to try and save in the inn, and his interest, obviously the benefits to the environment are important, but he said, I've saved $16,000 in the first 4 months of this year as a result of what I've done. So it's a cost savings. I had a chance to tour Raponi Toyota a couple of weeks ago, the first LEED certified auto dealer in New England. And they have everything from solar panels, efficient lighting, to an energy dashboard to monitor their energy use throughout the facility. And then, of course, on the job side, visited a number of companies like Warner Power, who are making the first breakthrough in a transformer, which is used throughout all of our buildings, in over 100 years. And if we could use that transformer widely throughout the country, we'd be able to save about 60 terawatts of electricity a year. That is equal to 5 times New Hampshire's annual electricity consumption. So on both sides of the ledger, we're seeing really exciting things happening around energy efficiency. And as the result of my experience, I worked with a number of groups and with Senator Rob Portman, a Republican from Ohio, to introduce comprehensive energy efficiency legislation. We introduced it in the last Congress. We got it through the Senate Energy Committee with a very strong bipartisan vote of 18-3. Never made it to the floor of the Senate. This year, we got it through the committee with a 19-3 vote, a strong bipartisan vote. And the legislation does several things, and you have a one-page handout on your table which describes it. It addresses buildings, puts in place voluntary building codes, and provides some incentives to work with states and private industry to make the code writing process more transparent. It trains the next generation of workers in energy-efficient commercial building design and operation through university-based building training and research assessment centers. We know that addressing the building's use of energy is very important because that's about 40% of the energy used in the United States. And of course, as we all know, here in New Hampshire, it's a higher percentage than that because we have so many old buildings. The legislation also addresses industrial efficiency, which is the sector of our economy that uses the most energy. It directs the Department of Energy's Advanced Manufacturing Office to work more closely with the private sector to encourage research, development, and commercialization of innovative energy-efficient technology. Helps businesses reduce their energy use and become more competitive by incentivizing the use of more efficient electric motors and transformers. I said that is a significant part of our energy use in this country. It establishes a voluntary Supply Star program that's modeled on Energy Star to try and encourage businesses to look at their supply chains and see where the energy use is coming from. And then finally, it addresses the federal government's use of energy. The federal government is the biggest user of energy, as Nancy will attest, in the world. And of course, about 93% of that energy is used by the military, who, by the way, are really very forward-thinking in terms of what they're doing to address their energy use. The Navy has a goal of reducing their energy use 50% by 2020, and they are well on the way to doing that. So this is legislation that I think is a win-win-win. According to the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, by 2020, if we had passed the bill last year, it would have saved consumers $4 billion, created 80,000 jobs, and been the equivalent of taking 5 million cars off the road. Now, the good thing is the bill is on the floor of the Senate, and it is the first energy bill. It is the first energy bill to come to the floor of the Senate since 2007. When we go back to Washington on September 9th, we will be on the bill. So we expect some amendments, a robust debate, but it's exciting that we are dealing with energy finally. And we actually have a shot at getting legislation through the House as well. There is a bipartisan bill that's been introduced in the House by our neighbor Peter Welch and Representative McKinley, who is a Republican from West Virginia. The leadership in the House, both the chairman of the committee, Fred Upton, and one of the members of their leadership have talked about trying to address energy efficiency. So I think this is legislation that has a real shot at getting through. And one of the lessons for me, in addition to the importance of energy efficiency, one of the lessons has been that there probably is no magic silver bullet. And I know I'm not telling you anything you all don't already know. But we've got to think about what we can do incrementally that continues to make progress on this issue. And we've got to think about how we can do it in so many ways, because clearly climate change is having an impact on New Hampshire, on the country, and on the world. And we've got to think about how we're going to address that in a way that can bring people together, build some consensus, and you know, if you don't want to do it because you don't believe in climate change, you think it's not happening, it's not real, but you're able to do something that saves you money and helps address climate change, then by golly, that's what we ought to be doing. Because we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good as we're looking at how we make progress on this issue. And I know that your panelists are going to give you their insights this morning in a way that will give us all a lot more to think about. But I think we've got a huge challenge, but we've also got a real opportunity. And we need to think about where we can seize those opportunities and make a difference on this issue. So thank you all very much for your attention, for your interest, and for being here this morning. And go panel.